A 12-year-old boy finds himself in the future, where he encounters an intelligent spacecraft and goes on an exciting journey. Will he be able to make his way back home? Let's find out. The movie starts with a Frisbee dog championship happening in South Florida. A 12-year-old boy named David is participating in the competition with his dog named Bruiser. After an exciting match, another boy and his dog win, and they make fun of David and call Bruiser dumb for losing. However, David confidently says that one day Bruiser will win that championship too. Afterwards, David gets into the car with his mom, dad, and his younger brother named Jeff. However, David doesn't like Jeff because he always teases him. When they arrive home, David sees his neighbor, Jennifer, walking by. Later, in his room, David uses a telescope to watch Jennifer from his window. Suddenly, his dad enters the room and asks what he's doing. David hesitates but eventually admits that he's watching Jennifer. Although he denies having a crush on her, his dad realizes the truth and smiles. Then he suggests that David should talk to Jennifer to get to know her better. In the evening, David's mom asks him to pick up Jeff from his friend's house. David and his dog, Bruiser, walk through a wooded area. Suddenly, Jeff tries to scare David, causing him to accidentally fall into a ravine and lose consciousness. Unaware of what happened, Jeff runs home. When David wakes up, he rushes back to his house but finds a different family living there. Confused and unable to find his family, David starts crying, and the new residents call the police for help. The police take David to the station, where they discover that he was legally declared dead 8 years ago. The police officers ask David about the current date, and he says it's the 4th of July, 1978 although it's 1986. However, they take him to a house where he finds his aged family. Shocked and confused, David faints and wakes up in a hospital, learning that 8 years have passed. The scene cuts to a team of NASA finding a spacecraft that collided with a tower. They drag it into their lab to conduct further investigations on the strange machine, but they fail to open it. Later, when David regains consciousness, he discovers that 8 years have passed. His younger brother, Jeff, who has grown up, comes to comfort him, and David expresses his fear of not aging like others. However, Jeff assures him that everything will be okay. The doctors inform David's parents that they will conduct tests to help him remember and that he needs to stay at the hospital for a few days, but David refuses. Eventually, his mother calms him down by promising to stay with him around the clock. Then, the hospital conducts mental tests to uncover what happened to David. To everyone's surprise, they find that David is directly communicating with a computer using binary code. However, they are unable to decipher the data his brain is sending. The doctors also notice unusual brain patterns and strange objects. These findings capture the attention of some NASA personnel who have come across a spacecraft similar to the one reflected in David's brain patterns. Following that, the leader of the NASA team, Dr. Faraday, meets with David and his family, attempting to convince them that he can help answer their questions about David's disappearance. At first, David and his family refuse, stating that they just want him to have a normal life. However, Dr. Faraday persuades David that he is the only one who can help him uncover the truth, and he promises to observe him for only 48 hours. Eventually, David agrees to go with Dr. Faraday, and they go to a closely monitored special room at NASA. In the room, David befriends an intern named Carolyn, who regularly visits him with a robotic assistant called RALF. Through Carolyn, David learns about the events of the past 8 years, including the cancellation of his favorite show and the introduction of music videos on television. Well, David, who needs TV dramas when you have been living in a real-life sci-fi adventure right here? In the morning, David's dad calls him to check on the situation. David reassures his dad that he's fine, but he's locked in a room. Hearing this, David's father becomes worried, but Dr. Faraday dismisses it, saying it's for David's protection. Moreover, David's father reminds Dr. Faraday about his promise to return David in 48 hours. However, after a couple of hours, the team takes David for brain tests. They start asking him questions, but David keeps saying he doesn't know anything. Suddenly, David's brain sends electrical signals to the NASA computer, providing answers that he couldn't possibly know. Dr. Faraday realizes that David's mind is filled with information and asks more questions, but most of the information is in a language they don't understand. Furthermore, David's brain tells the scientists that he has been to a planet called Phaeton, which is 569 light-years away from Earth. He shares star charts and other information with them. Hey David, slow down. You don't want to break the light speed limit outside of Phaeton, right? Thus Dr. Faraday realizes that David hasn't aged because he's been traveling to and from Phaeton at the speed of light. Surprised by all this, Dr. Faraday acknowledges that 48 hours is not enough time to study David's brain. However, David becomes scared by the whole experience and runs out of the room. In the afternoon, Carolyn visits David's room and asks how the testing is going. David responds that it has been terrible, but he is hopeful because he believes he will get to go home tomorrow. However, Carolyn doubts this and informs him that she has seen the meal schedule for the upcoming week, which shows that he will be staying there for the entire week. This makes David furious, and he realizes that they have been lying to him. He asks Carolyn for help in escaping from the facility, and she assures him that she will do everything she can to assist him. David also asks Carolyn to inform his parents about the situation, and she agrees to do so. The next day, David hears strange voices calling him and asking for his help. He sees the RALF robot entering the room and gets an idea. He quickly gets inside the robot and sneaks past the security. The robot takes him to where the team has placed the spacecraft. As David approaches the spacecraft, it opens, revealing steps. With some hesitation, he enters the spacecraft, and a robotic commander addresses him as the navigator. Confused, David asks if the commander is the one calling him, and he says yes. The commander explains that David's brain has been programmed with all the star charts needed for a mission. While they are talking, the security team notices the cameras and alerts Dr. Faraday. They realize that someone has breached the security and entered the hangar. Dr. Faraday and his team quickly rush towards the spacecraft and find David inside. They point their guns at the spacecraft. In response, David asks the commander to close the doors and take the spacecraft away from that place. The commander insists that David must complete the mission and return to Falon, but David tells him that he doesn't want to go to Falon. However, David asks the commander to take the spacecraft 20 miles above the ground as he is feeling overwhelmed and needs some time to think. With this, David manages to escape from NASA temporarily. Further, he is amazed by the advanced technology of the spacecraft and gives the commander some simple instructions to test its efficiency. Meanwhile, Dr. Faraday instructs his team to track the spacecraft's location and follow them. After some time, David asks the commander why he is here. The commander replies, saying that he has been sent from Falon to collect samples of life from different galaxies for study and he chose David on this planet. The commander explains that on Falon, they discovered that people on Earth use only 10% of their brains. They decided to fill David's brain with star charts to see what would happen. Now, the commander tells David that he needs the data saved in David's brain because he accidentally leaked the information and the spacecraft crashed into an electrical tower, erasing all the data. The commander further explains that they usually return the species to their planets at the same time they collected them, but it's too dangerous for David's body to travel back in time. David disagrees and makes a condition that he will give the commander the star charts only if the commander takes him back home. David asks the commander's name, and he responds that he is called Trimaxion Drone Ship. "Ah well, that's quite a mouthful, what about calling you Max instead?" Meanwhile, the NASA teams locate the aircraft, so David asks Max to take them somewhere safe where they can't be found. Max guides the ship into the ocean. As Max prepares for the mind transfer to retrieve the star charts, David explores the ship and discovers various strange species that Max collected for study. Max assures David that he will return them to their own time and planets except for a creature called a Puckmarin, whose planet was destroyed. David becomes fond of the little creature and holds it in his hand. During the mind transfer, Max experiences human emotions and behaves strangely. David and Max enjoy each other's company and have fun conversations. David argues with Max, saying that if he were flying the ship, they would already be home. In response, Max turns off the spacecraft's engines and asks David to fly it. This makes David nervous, and he asks Max to stop joking because he doesn't know how to fly the machine. However, with Max's guidance, David learns how to fly the spacecraft. On the other side, David's dad calls Dr. Faraday to inquire about David. Dr. Faraday lies to him about the situation and asks David's dad to call back later. Further, Dr. Faraday instructs his team to find Carolyn since she was the last person to visit David in his room. They quickly locate Carolyn when she visits David's parents' house. However, she reveals everything that happened with David to his parents before being caught by the NASA team. Eventually, the spaceship heads towards Florida, and David manages to call his family. He talks to his brother Jeff and explains that he doesn't know the location of their new house. His brother assures him that he will help find it. Meanwhile, NASA has been using radar to track David and Max's progress and realizes that they are heading home. They send trucks to intercept the ship and capture David. As night falls, David finds the house when Jeff sets off fireworks on top of it. When the ship lands, Dr. Faraday appears and tries to convince David to leave the ship. However, David chooses to go back inside the ship and tells Max to fly away. Later, David explains that he can't stay in 1986 because he doesn't want to be a test subject for NASA for the rest of his life. Max warns him again that going back to 1978 is dangerous and could result in his vaporization. Despite the risk, David is determined to take that chance. Thus they bid farewell to each other, and Max speeds through space and time. A moment later, David wakes up in the same ravine. As he makes his way home, he hears his dad calling from a nearby dock, and David smiles, realizing that Max succeeded in taking him back to 1978. David greets each of his family members, expressing his love for them. The family sets off in their boat, and David discovers that the little puck Marin has hidden in his backpack. Moreover, Max can be seen flying overhead, and David is relieved to be back home. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you smash that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications to help the channel out. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.